The Colosseum, a symbol of ancient Rome's power, culture, and engineering genius. For centuries, these massive structures were the beating heart of Roman entertainment, where blood, sweat, and cheers echoed through the stone. But how did these extraordinary venues come to be? What motivated their design and construction? And why did they become such an integral part of Roman life? Today, we'll embark on a journey back in time, tracing the origins and evolution of the Colosseum from its humble beginnings to the epic spectacle that captivated an entire civilization. This is the story of the Colosseum. The Colosseum was built on a flat area on the floor of a low valley between the Cælian, Esquiline, and Palatine hills, through which a stream ran, as well as an artificial lake and marsh. By the 2nd century BC, the area was densely populated, but the Great Fire of Rome in 64 BC devastated the area, after which Nero seized much of it to add to his personal domain. He built the massive Domus Aurea on the site, fronted by an artificial lake surrounded by pavilions, gardens, and gateways. Later, Emperor Vespasian built the Colosseum over the lake in the gardens of Emperor Nero's Golden House. To protect against earthquake damage, the concrete foundations were dug 6 meters deep. The building was part of a larger building program initiated by Emperor Vespasian to restore Rome to its former glory before the recent civil war. Along with 2 other new buildings, the Temple of Peace and the Temple of Claudius, it was commissioned by Emperor Vespasian to demonstrate that Rome was reviving and still the center of the ancient world. Built around AD 70 to 72, the Colosseum is a 4-story amphitheater built of travertine, tough, volcanic rock, and brick-faced concrete, located in the center of Rome. It could accommodate between 50,000 and 80,000 spectators at various times in its history, with an average attendance of around 65,000. The Colosseum is elliptical in plan and is 189 meters, 615 feet/640 Roman feet, long, 156 meters, 510 feet/528 Roman feet, wide, and has a base area of 24,000 square meters, 6 acres. The height of the outer wall is 48 meters, 157 feet/165 Roman feet. The original circumference was measured at 545 meters, 1,788 feet/1,835 Roman feet. The central arena was an ellipse 87 meters, 287 feet long and 55 meters, 180 feet wide, surrounded by a 5 meters, 15 feet high wall topped by tiers of seating. The arena was completed up to the 3rd tier by the time of Vespasian's death in 79, with his son Titus completing the top tier in 80, and further modifications were made during the reign of Domitian, reigned 81 to 96. The Colosseum was originally known as the Flavian Amphitheater. The 1st to 3rd levels were large galleries on corridors filled with statues. The 1st level had Doric columns, the 2nd had Ionic columns, and the 3rd had Corinthian columns. The 4th level had Corinthian columns and small rectangular windows, and the 4th level was a combination of wood and stone. Emperor Domitian added a gallery to the top of the Colosseum to increase the seating capacity. There were over 80 entrances, 76 of which were numbered, and tickets were sold for each entrance. There were 2 entrances for gladiators, one of which was called Porta Libitina, the Roman goddess of death, and was the door through which the dead were taken out of the arena. The other door was Porta Sana Viveria, through which the victors and those allowed to survive the competitions left the arena. The last 2 doors were reserved for the emperor's use. Inside, the arena had 3 tiers of seating for all classes of people. Surrounding the arena was a wide marble platform, stage, protected by a wall, inside which were luxurious seats or boxes next to the ring, where the emperor and other dignitaries would watch the events. Outside this area, the marble seats were divided into sections, one for wealthy citizens, middle-class citizens, slaves and foreigners, and finally an area of wooden seats and standing space within a colonnade with a flat roof on the top tier reserved for women and the poor. On top of this roofed stage, sailors were hired to manage a large canopy that protected the audience from the rain or provided shade on hot days. The different tiers of seating were accessed via wide staircases, each stage and seat numbered. The total capacity of the Colosseum was approximately 45,000 seated and 5,000 standing. It also had ingenious underground lifting mechanisms that allowed wild animals to be brought into action at any time. Beneath the floor of the arena was a two-story network of tunnels and underground cages beneath the arena, where gladiators and animals were held before the competitions began. Separate tunnels were also designed for the emperors and Vestal virgins to allow them to enter and exit the Colosseum without having to pass through the crowd. The Colosseum was first used around 80 or 81 for the games, and it is estimated that around 9,000 wild animals were killed during the inaugural games. The Colosseum was originally built to host gladiatorial shows as well as a variety of other events, reenactments of famous battles, plays based on Roman mythology and mock-sea battles that take place over short periods of time. The shows, known as munera, were always organized by private individuals rather than the state. They had a strong religious element but were also symbols of family power and prestige and were immensely popular. However, blood sports and death were the real purpose of the spectacles, and a whole industry arose to cater to the mass demand for entertainment. The shows often lasted from dawn to dusk, and the gladiators would often begin the show with a chariot parade accompanied by trumpets and even a hydraulic organ, then dismount and circle the arena. Duels often began the day's fighting events, often between women, dwarfs or disabled people using wooden weapons. Blood sports between different classes of gladiators involved weapons such as swords, spears, tridents and nets, and involved not only male gladiators but also female gladiators fighting each other. Another major attraction was the animal hunt, or venatio. This hunt used a variety of wild animals, mainly imported from Africa and the Middle East, including species such as rhinoceros, hippopotamus, elephant, giraffe, bison, ermine, Barbary lion, leopard, bear, Caspian tiger, crocodile and ostrich. The battles and hunts were often staged against elaborate sets with trees and movable buildings. These events could be large in scale. Animals had no chance in these contests and were usually killed at long range with spears or arrows. Hundreds, sometimes even thousands, of animals were killed in a single-day event, often with deliberate brutality to achieve crude leader, the exact level of cruelty. In 107 Trajan celebrated his victory in Dacia with contests involving 11,000 animals and 10,000 gladiators over 123 days. During the lunch break, the executions would be staged. Those condemned to death would be brought into the arena, naked and unarmed, to face the beasts of death, which would tear them to pieces. Acrobats and magicians would also perform, usually during the breaks. In 217, the Colosseum was severely damaged by a great fire, which destroyed the wooden upper floors of the interior of the arena. It was not fully repaired until about 240, and further repairs were made in 250 or 252 and again in 320. In 399, the Roman Emperor Honorius, 384–423, abolished the Colosseum Games, although condemned criminals continued to fight wild animals for another century. In 443 a major earthquake damaged much of the Colosseum and it was restored during the reigns of Theodosius II and Valentinian III, reigned 425–455. The Colosseum continued to be used for competitions until the 6th century. Animal hunts continued until 523. But the building began to show signs of neglect and grass grew over the arena. In the late 6th century a small chapel was built into the structure of the Colosseum, although this does not seem to have given any particular religious significance to the building as a whole. The Colosseum was converted into a cemetery. Many of the arcaded spaces in the arcades under the seating were converted into houses and workshops, and were rented out until the 12th century. Around 1200, the Frangipani family took over the Colosseum and fortified it for use as a castle. In the early to mid-14th century, the papacy's move to Avignon caused Rome's population to decline, leaving the area unsafe. The Colosseum was largely abandoned by the public and became a popular haunt for robbers. In the 14th century, a major earthquake severely damaged the Colosseum, causing its southern facade, which lay on less stable alluvial terrain, to collapse completely. Much of the rubble was reused to build palaces, churches, hospitals, and other buildings elsewhere in Rome. In 1377, after the papacy returned to Rome, the Colosseum was restored by a congregation called the Arciconfraternita del SS Salvator ad Sancta Sanctorum, who then occupied a northern section of the arena until the early 19th century. During the 16th and 17th centuries, church officials sought a productive role for the Colosseum. Pope Sixtus V, 1585–1590, had planned to turn the building into a woolen factory to provide employment for Rome's prostitutes, but the proposal failed due to his early death. In 1671, Cardinal Altieri authorized the use of bullfighting, but the proposal met with public outcry and the idea was abandoned. In 1749, Pope Benedict XIV confirmed the view that the Colosseum was a sacred site where early Christians were martyred. He banned the use of the Colosseum as a quarry and consecrated the building to the Passion of Christ and erected the Stations of the Cross, declaring that it was consecrated with the blood of Christian martyrs who died there. Subsequent popes initiated various stabilization and restoration projects, removing extensive vegetation that had overgrown the structure and threatened to further damage it. The facade was reinforced with triangular tiles in 1807 and 1827, and the interior was repaired in 1831, 1846, and the 1930s. The structure beneath the arena was partially excavated in 1810 to 1814 and 1874, and fully exposed under Benito Mussolini in the 1930s. The Colosseum is today one of Rome's most popular tourist attractions, welcoming millions of visitors each year.